At the bench with Uncle Greg. How are you doing?
I am just damn fine.
This is good. This is good. So tonight is the night that Ace Frehley comes to Harrisburg.
Yeah, gonna go hang out with Ace and tour manager, old buddy, working partner, Night Bob.
Okay.
And Night Bob, uh, I was a huge New York Dolls fan growing up, and when they got back together, Night Bob pulled me into that organization, and he's just been a fantastic friend. And now he's out with Ace
Okay.
doing front of house and tour managing. So we're gonna hang out and have a good time and
So
listen to Ace's
were you
laugh.
a Kiss fan when you were growing up?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay.
In
Which
fact, I
one
don't
were
trust
you?
anybody that wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah, which one were you?
man, I wanted to be Ace when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're a kid, whoever matters most to you has a huge effect on you. And for me, it was my first guitar idol was Kiss.
Hmm.
Well, no, scratch that. My first guitar idol was George Harrison at 9, and then
Hmm.
at 12, it was Ace Frehley, and then Eddie Van Halen came along and just knocked everybody over.
Yeah, Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley to me was a Kiss Alive 2 shocked me. I heard something going on there that nobody else did at the time because nobody wants to acknowledge this, but Ace was tapping a year before Van Halen 1 came out.
Well, yeah, but to be totally honest,
There's people, yeah,
Brian May tapped before Eddie,
yeah, Steve
and
Hackett, and
Billy Gibbons, and
yeah,
Beer Drinkers and Hell Rangers.
okay,
So tapping's been around, but Eddie took what was available
yeah,
and just ran with it. I mean, literally. And you had all these guys that came later, like Steve Lynch from Autograph and
hmm,
Jeff Watson from Night Ranger, and they all had their sophisticated take on it, but it was a gimmick.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas Eddie, it was a musical tool.
absolutely. So Ace, for me, I think we're relatively the same age. That came in at the right age. That
Yeah.
part
I'm
really was
58.
kick
So
ass. Well, you're older than me. Kick ass guitar player, superhero guy. I
funny
love
as
their
hell.
music. And this was at the age that you could only like one band too. It's like if you were Kiss, you were an ACDC.
Well, yeah, you were
ACDC
obsessed.
camping, and when ACDC came along, some people jumped the ship camping. I was like, I want Ace to know that I was always with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, the people that became aware of Kiss later, uh, they became aware that like Gene Simmons is a huge douche, and whatever. But when we were kids, they controlled everything, so they were superheroes to us.
Oh, yeah.
There
Absolutely.
was nothing out there. I remember when People magazine published a photograph of Mike Corby of the Babies and said that it was Paul Stanley without his makeup. And it was a huge deal.
Hmm.
Um, we're so used to nowadays, celebrities. We know everything about them. We know what they drive, what they eat. There's all these people that pay former employees to spill the dirt. The whole Pam and Tommy thing, whatever.
Hmm.
But when we were kids,
They could keep a secret.
they could keep a secret, and the press kept a secret, and it was fun.
Hmm.
And um, to me, Kiss was it was a whole experience up until Alive 2, and then the proverbial shark jump with the album The Elder, and they got greedy, and by then Ace wasn't really involved anymore, and the
They
Coolidge
lost their
brothers
step.
came in,
I'd
and
like some of the Elder though. I'm going to be one that one of the where they went down. I to Unmask to me went was horrible.
yeah,
Even though there were a bunch of Ace tunes on it.
yeah.
There's probably more Ace tunes than Gene tunes, but the Elder I like yeah, Dark Light. There's some stuff in there. That was an Ace tune. So
I'm
anyway,
not with you. I'm
so
not with you. I think
Keith,
they're Ace tunes that didn't make it on earlier records to me. But you know what? I'm glad you like them, Rod.
yeah. Yeah, it's like people don't know. It's like bands nowadays, who are the guitar players? If you don't know, that means they're not being um they're no
Well,
superstar rock guitar players. They used to be names.
yeah, well, we grew up in a totally different time.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is 22 years my junior, and she has a totally different approach. She's kick-ass guitar player.
Mhm.
Sarah Sheriff, she plays with the Grant Bryan band, and Jillian Smith, and uh, but she just approaches everything drastically different. And
Yeah.
sometimes it leads to some pretty interesting times when she looks at me and she goes, really? But I'm okay.
No, no, our generation was coolest.
Well, everybody's
Everybody says that,
convinced that
though.
their generation was coolest, but
Yeah,
with our generation,
it was the coolest.
it was coolest. We had skateboarding,
Yeah.
we had loud rock and roll. Artists had control of themselves when we were young. The labels hadn't quite ruined creativity.
Yes, it should be noted that the label did not create Kiss.
No, Kiss was
Created Kiss.
created, and then Bill Aucoin, God bless him, got Casablanca Records to buy into the idea.
Yeah.
And I just read a fascinating book where they interview crew members and stuff from back in the day, and they, all the behind the scenes stuff. And I will say, though Gene Simmons and I will never share a cup of coffee, back then he was one of the hardest working guys ever. I mean, he and Paul were obsessed,
Or they still are.
and they really did a great job of marketing. They did a great job of bringing their influence to the masses, and especially because they were up against everything. But what the powers that be didn't realize was there were so many guys like me and you, and gals. I mean, it wasn't exclusively a male thing. It appealed to everybody. And it nowadays it's a little tired, but back then, man, it was when a new Kiss record came out, that was the stuff. And you went to the record store and you stood in line, and it was, I wouldn't trade that for the world. I loved our generation. I absolutely loved our generation.
I walked the hills to get the Kiss Alive 2 album.
Hills.
I walked 2 miles.
Yeah, I rode my bike to Kings.
Right.
4 miles away.
Right.
Kings. I remember riding home with one hand on the handlebar and the other hand holding the record, trying to read it as I'm riding home. It's like so stupid.
Yeah.
But I was like so obsessed that it was the longest ride ever to get home to throw Kiss Alive 2 on.
But I tell my kids, my students, every band needs a Detroit Rock City, and that album to me was life changing. And I don't know that people understand that. And maybe these days, like
you know what,
a musician be life changing.
I think that
it absolutely was.
It's a shame that, I mean, everything is so devalued now, but the experience, the whole thing, I mean, the merch wasn't outright. I had the Kiss belt buckle, with the iridescent Kiss lettering. I had the t-shirts. I had that huge poster that covered your whole wall. But that was it. There was only so many items. You weren't bludgeoned to death like now with, Gene has done Kiss caskets. I mean, yes. Really, do we need Kiss caskets? No,
Yeah. But I will say, Rock and Roll Over, I get this album, and in it was a sleeve to join the Kiss Army, and you could get the belt buckle, you could get the Kiss shirt with the decal.
Yep.
And it was like
I still have mine.
That was a big deal. And the Love Gun. I still have the Love Gun.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So that was it. I don't know. That was before it was ruined, but they were the first to do that.
Somewhere upstairs in the house, I have a couple scrapbooks, and I literally spent all of my allowance on anything that had to do with Kiss. I cut it out of the magazines or newspapers, put it in scrapbooks. And next time you're at the shop, we'll sit down and look through those. Absolutely. And I was obsessed, man. And to some extent that led me here, because I remember all the records said Kiss wants the best, so they use the best. Kiss uses Pearl drums, Marshall amps, and Gibson guitars. And Ace Frehley played Sunburst Les Pauls. And I'm going to say that's where my obsession with Les Pauls came from was Ace Frehley. And some people it was Jimmy Page or Jeff Beck or whatever. For me, it was Ace Frehley.
Yeah.
And I stuck with it, and I will always play Les Pauls or variants on Les Pauls, because I play guitars from Schecter USA Custom Shop called the Solo 2, which is a USA made guitar, which is similar to Les Paul. And in future installments of this, I'll show you some of this stuff. And Fantastic guitars. But I have more Gibson Les Pauls than any other guitars in this house.
Yes.
Like there's a
One day I will.
you saw
Yeah.
you saw in the studio, you saw the guitars hanging on a
Yes.
wall.
And what is wonderful about you, because we've had this discussion before, Les Pauls can be very temperamental. They have a personality.
Oh yeah, there's good ones and there's bad ones, and there's
Yeah.
more bad ones than good ones. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
but the other thing is you have to know how to you have to know how to tweak them. And
Secret handshakes. Yeah.
Okay, so can we talk about some of the secret handshakes?
Let's talk about secret handshakes. All right. Well, I have a Les Paul right here.
Oh
Oh
wow.
my gosh. Isn't that convenient?
Okay, so who does this come from? Are we allowed to
This
say?
is Jeff Blando of he plays in the Vince Neil band and Slaughter.
Okay.
And I'm about to give this back to him. This was all messed up. He broke the headstock off repeatedly, and so he sent it back to Gibson, and they repaired it and they boogered it up. So I made it right. And if you check my social media, Instagram is Greg Platzer Guitars, and Facebook Greg Platzer Guitars. I'm pretty predictable. You can see all the work I did to this guitar. But anyway, things about Les Pauls that you should know. All right. The most important thing about any guitar, setting up any guitars, is the action and truss rod. Let me move that. There we go. The truss rod goes down through the neck, and it's on a Les Paul. It's adjusted right here. You take this off, and there's a little brass nut right there. On some Strats, it's that way. On some, it's down here at the bottom, whatever. But just about 75-80% of the guitars that come to my bench, the truss rod is improperly adjusted. Okay. Now, what you want to do is, the way a truss rod works, actually, let me see if I have, well, here's something I'm doing for somebody famous that I can't use the name yet, but when I do, you'll know about it. The truss rod is adjustable down there. Yeah. Right there. On this, whoops. This is a Sandberg Electra series bass that I'm duplicating this neck on the customer's G&L, and you can see that the truss rod is adjustable up in here. And with most common, the most common truss rod adjustment nowadays is a 4mm wrench, but on the Gibsons, it's a 5/8 socket and blah, 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 blah. But the whole point of the truss rod is to counteract the force of the strings on the neck. So we're going to pretend that this is the neck of the guitar. All right. And right now, static, there's nothing going on. But if I put strings up here and I add them to tension, the neck goes like that. Okay. Now, this is exaggerated, of course. Yeah. So the truss rod is an internal rod that, as you tighten it, will counteract the force of the strings and make it straight again. And 90% of the guitars, did I say 80 earlier? I'm going to go to 90, 75. I don't know. An awful lot of them come in and they're improperly adjusted, because if a guitar is shipped with, let's say, 10 to 46 strings like Gibson does, or Hamer did, or whoever, Schecter, then when you go with a lighter string, like a 9 to 42, then the truss rod is actually stronger and the strings are going to be laying down on the neck. If you go to an 11 to 50, then you're going to have more tension on the strings and the strings are going to be lifted up. But there's other factors as well. We live on the Eastern Seaboard here, and so we have radical temperature changes and radical humidity changes. Guitars don't really mind being cold or hot. They don't care. What they do mind is when the humidity changes, especially suddenly. Yeah. Because the fingerboard, if you think about it, on a proper guitar, not this thing because it's all worn out, but on a proper guitar, there's finish everywhere but on the surface of the fingerboard if it has a rosewood or ebony fingerboard. If it has a maple board like on a Stratocaster, there's finish everywhere, and they're a little less sensitive to humidity changes. But with this guitar, with the ebony, when you turn the heat on in your house, and you don't have a humidifier, then you dry the air out. Guitars are comfortable where your skin is comfortable, basically 50%, 60% humidity. When it gets down to 20% humidity, what happens is the wood will shed moisture and it'll shrink.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you'll have the situation where the frets will stick out beyond the sides of the fingerboard. We call that sprout. This guitar had excessive sprout because the wood they used to make the neck wasn't even dry yet. It was green wood. But anyway, the frets will stick out. And the other thing is that the neck will shrink this way, but only on the front where the fingerboard is. So it's going to curl regardless of string tension, because the front is now shorter than the back. It's going to curl forward.
Yeah.
So if I did a perfect adjustment on a guitar in 20% humidity, got everything just right, then in the summertime here, if you were playing down at City Island on an 80, 90% humidity day, the fingerboard will swell up. And now the strings are just going to lay on it all the way down. And you've got to go through a whole nother thing.
So here's a question for you.
Yes, sir.
When bands come within 100-mile radius of us, you're always going backstage and you're doing, do they have their own guys to help?
Yeah. Yeah. And most road guys are real good.
At this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get hired if you can't do the job. And one of the jobs is, if you're playing in Florida for 3 weeks in the summertime, you've got to be adjusting the truss rods and making everything work so that the guitar plays well. And then when you go to, if you're in Northern Canada in the wintertime, then you've got to be able to adjust it up and make sure that everything works well. So essentially, yeah, we can talk about touring techs in a minute because I am one. The truss rod, adjusting the truss rod. Okay, everybody at home, there's a million myths about adjusting truss rods. And I've read on the internet so much advice from people that don't know shit. All right. Here's my opinion. This is the Uncle Greg way of doing truss rods. You can adjust it anytime you want, as far as you want, and the guitar doesn't care. What you need to be aware of, though, is if you adjust it beyond what the wood is used to, it'll take a little while to settle in. Okay. How I do it is, let's say this neck right here, which is perfectly adjusted right now, but let's say it was curled a little bit. What I would do is go a quarter turn, and then I hold the string down at the last fret and the first fret, and that turns the string into a straight edge. And by looking at that, I'm going to cheat here and do this. We can see if it's laying on the frets there or if it's up a little bit. What we want is to have the string up above the fret just a little bit. Now, how much? Each guitar will tell you. I get so annoyed when I read on the gear page or the Les Paul forum or whatever. I've got 13/63 action with 12/27 here, and this.
That's just people trying to impress you with their cleverness.
That's the people that list the equipment they have in their signature.
Yeah.
True story, on the gear page a bunch of years ago, I just put a question. Why do some of you guys list every piece of gear you own in your signature? And I just put that on in the morning, and then I went about my day. And in the afternoon, I went back to check it, and it was gone. And Scott Peterson from the gear page emailed me and said, look, I had to take that down because people were ripping you a new ass. And I was like, why? And people were offended that I asked that question. And you know who was offended? The people that had a lot of gear in their signatures, because I called them out on, I didn't even realize it, but I was calling them out on the fact that they're bragging on what they own. But anyway, truss rods. So if your guitar plays really well right here, but it's difficult to play here, then your truss rod needs to be straightened a little bit. If it plays really well right here, but it frets out down here, then your truss rod is a little too tight and you need to loosen it just a little bit. When I set up a guitar, what I do is the truss rod won't adjust up here. So I'll set the bridge and everything so it plays well right here. And then I'll go and adjust the truss rod and figure out what things need to be. what a lot of people will do is they'll adjust the truss rod so it plays well here, and then the action might be really high here, which means your truss rod is overly tight and you've got the bridge up too high. So quick little tip when you're adjusting truss rods, first get the bridge down so that you're not fretting out here, and make sure you bend notes. Make sure you bend notes and that they ring, because if it's too low and you go to bend a note, it'll choke. Get it playing well right up here, then adjust your truss rod, and boom. So, and we'll talk about nut slot height. We'll talk about bridge height, all that other stuff. But the truss rod is critical, and you will not hurt your guitar by adjusting your truss rod.
That's news to me.
One thing.
Go ahead.
If the guitar has never had the truss rod adjusted and you go to tighten it for the first time, you're going against the force of the strings, but also any lacquer and glue that might have gotten in there. So I always say the first time you adjust the truss rod, knock it loose, go to the slack. Remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey. So loosen it first to break the truss rod free of any glue or lacquer or anything that may be on it, and then adjust it with aplomb. But and if you have a Rickenbacker, don't do anything. Bring it to a tech, because Rickenbacker doesn't use hardened steel for their truss rods, and most of them have dual truss rods, and I've seen guys just absolutely strip them the first time they touch them. So Rickenbacker,
that's what I'm afraid of. I didn't know that somebody like myself could go to my guitar and adjust a truss rod and not be afraid of I still probably wouldn't do it, but fear is that I would the neck would be done.
No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I mean, if it's a quality guitar, I mean, if we're talking about a Miley Cyrus signature or a First Act or something like that, maybe you don't adjust it. All right. But if it's a Gibson or a Fender or a Schecter or an ESP or, whatever's out there, Ibanez, then it's well built enough that you should be able to do it just fine. If you're not sure, if you're a little scared of doing it, fine, bring it to a tech. And then, at the very least, I mean, Rod, I'll take care of your stuff. But I just want to dispel the myth that adjusting truss rod is something that only qualified techs should do. It's on most guitars. The truss rod, you might only go a quarter or third of a turn and you're good. So, and it bears explaining there's two kinds of truss rods out there. There's a single acting and dual acting. A single acting truss rod only tightens. So essentially when the guitar is made, they factor in, they'll make the neck and they'll factor in that there's no string tension on it. So they'll clamp everything up. And then once you add string tension, that will start bowing the neck. And so then you adjust the truss rod to straighten it. A dual acting truss rod is becoming more and more common. A dual acting truss rod basically has a spinning, the part that you adjust spins, and there's an anchor at the other end, and it moves back and forth. And what they do is they locate the anchor up here, and then you have the end up there at the headstock. And as you turn it, you can actually make the neck go like this, or you can make the neck go like this. So it's better. A lot of companies that the manufacturing might be a little hurried. They've gone to dual acting rods because then you can take advantage of the fact, like if you use green wood and it shrinks a little bit, you'll be able to adjust it. Whereas if you have a single acting truss rod and the wood settles and the truss rod's no longer putting pressure on it, then you basically have a bad guitar. The one thing about double acting truss rods that I don't like is if it's right in the center, if it's not pushing or pulling on the neck, it can rattle. In that case, there's a way of fixing that. But I'd say the majority of the guitars out there nowadays, the public doesn't put up with poorly made anything anymore. I mean, even the cheapest
older guitars are the single.
Yeah. Dual acting rods only came about sometime in the 80s. So all the classic vintage stuff or anything that's based on a vintage model.
So 1990 and beyond is
well, I like brand new Les Pauls still have single acting rods because that's what works. Brand new Strats and stuff like that. But a lot of the modern guitars that a lot of your Ibanez's or what have you have dual acting rods. So fun stuff. And I wonder how many people have already clicked off now because they're bored with Truss Rod Doc.
That this is all
Ace
right.
Frehley and Truss Rods. This
So
is
Ace Frehley
specialized.
tonight in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Les Paul's, Jeff Blando.
Jeff Blando.
Truss Rod Talk. Keep your guitars in tune from last week.
Keep your guitars tuned. When you put them away, do not slack the strings to take tension off the neck. Leave the tension on the neck.
Yes. Alrighty, Greg. Another episode, and I will maybe
the new shorter episode. By the way,
maybe I'll see you tonight, maybe not, but we have something to talk about next week.
Excellent.
All right,
brother.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right. God bless everybody.
All right. Absolutely. See you then. See ya. Peace.